By the 7th century, the kings of the Merovingian dynasty had lost control of their realm. They were kings in name only. They kept their flowing hair and long beards, sat on thrones, and rode in ceremonial ox-drawn carts, but they held absolutely zero practical power. Managing the massive, fragmented landmass of post-Roman Europe was a logistical nightmare. Without a central economy, wealth simply meant seizing land and dividing the spoils of war among restless regional lords. The people actually running the day-to-day operations were the mayors of the palace. Think of them as ruthless prime ministers, bureaucrats who controlled the kingdom's administration and military, while the nominal king watched from the sidelines. In 751, a mayor named Pepin the Short solved this awkward political problem. He sent a simple question to the Pope: who should hold the royal title, the man with the name or the man with the power? The Pope sided with the power. With that backing, Pepin deposed the last Merovingian king and sent him to a monastery. Administrative control is useless if the people don't believe you have the right to rule. By securing the Pope's anointment, Pepin's family, the Carolingians, gained divine legitimacy. But they also inherited the ultimate engineering problem: how to actually run Europe. When Pepin's son, Charlemagne, took the throne, he faced a brutal geographic reality. His realm was expanding rapidly, and in an age without mass communication, a king couldn't physically be everywhere at once to dispense justice. His solution was to multiply himself. Charlemagne created the Missi Dominici, or the king's hands. He deployed pairs of elite officials, usually one aristocrat and one clergyman, out from the palace to act as physical extensions of his own will. He handed them written copies of his edicts and sent them across the map. Their job was to enforce imperial laws, report local rebellions back to the center, and stop regional lords from stealing land from the peasantry. But the system required placing deep trust in highly vulnerable human beings. Charlemagne had to constantly issue warnings to his emissaries, strictly forbidding them from accepting bribes, which ranged from rare art to simple pairs of shoes, from the people they were supposed to govern. Delegating authorities solved the distance problem for a time, yet it meant the empire relied on a network of individuals operating far from the king's sight, creating a permanent vulnerability to local corruption and personal greed. Even if an emissary carried the king's orders, those orders had to be read. In the 8th century, local priests were often entirely uneducated, and regional laws were written down in a chaotic mess of completely incompatible local scripts. Charlemagne initiated a massive educational reform. He imported Europe's top intellectuals, including the scholar Alcuin of York, and ordered monasteries to establish schools to teach grammar, reading, and writing. To fix unreadable texts, Alcuin engineered a technological solution, a new script called Carolingian Minuscule. Instead of messy handwriting, it used clear lowercase letters and explicit spaces between words. Monks could suddenly copy laws rapidly and accurately. By standardizing the written word, Charlemagne created the communication infrastructure required to run Europe's first cohesive cross-continental bureaucracy. But a bureaucracy can't defend borders. Charlemagne's state needed a massive standing army, which presented a massive economic problem. Europe still lacked a strong, currency-based economy to pay soldiers. The Carolingian workaround was to formalize the fiefdom. The king granted tracts of land and legal privileges to local lords. In strict exchange, those lords swore oaths to provide military service and troops. Trading land for loyalty fueled a rapid, highly effective military expansion across the continent. However, it outsourced the empire's true wealth, its land, directly into the hands of independent local warlords. This entire system reached its absolute peak on Christmas Day in the year 800, when the Pope crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. His geopolitical reach was staggering. The Carolingian court maintained diplomatic networks that stretched to Córdoba and Constantinople, and Charlemagne even received an elephant as a gift from the Caliph of Baghdad. But the empire harbored a fatal structural flaw. The entire apparatus was held together almost entirely by Charlemagne's terrifying personal charisma and endless micromanagement. When his successor, Louis the Pious, took over, he lacked that same iron grip. Under pressure from internal civil wars and aggressive external Viking invasions tearing at the borders, the central authority cracked. the central state disintegrated, and power retreated back behind the walls of local castles. Yet the Carolingian operating system, the standardized writing, the strict alliances with the church, and the feudal land contracts remained in place, programming the political reality of Europe for the next 1,000 years.